In the Pursuit of Truth. Dowley. Chapter 10. To Master English. One language sets you in a corridor for life. Two languages open every door along the way. Frank Smith. Dr. felt lucky that an English course was taught as early as his first year in the middle school. The similarity of the newly established Chinese pinyin system and the English alphabet made the introduction into English learning a little easier. If you have to give some credit for accomplishment to the government in its early years, this was one of them. Of course, the pronunciations of the two languages are vastly different. Dr. stumbled briefly trying to get the English sound, th, right. He was a pretty good accent imitator and often tried his skill in catching the tone of some Chinese dialects and had some fun in doing so. But in this case, he needed a little theoretical guidance. Put the tip of the tongue between the teeth, the teacher advised, without biting it. Dr. practiced in front of a mirror. Soon he was able to get it right. China was not an ideal place to learn English then. As a closed society for many years since 1949, that was just not an environment conducive to effective foreign language learning. Radio waves of Voice of America and BBC were interfered with, and it was illegal for average citizens to listen in. Radio Peking and Peking Review were both run by the Chinese government. The content was highly political but of little practical value to help listeners or readers to master English. People could be familiar with those programs and publications but would still get totally lost if they were suddenly airborne and parachuted into California. In his high school years, Dr. already had a good grasp of the basic grammar and a sizable vocabulary. Reading was not a problem, if he knew the content. He was elected as English course representative of his class, and his classmates often sought help from him, which he was willing to offer with enthusiasm. One day, in a group discussion, one of his classmates asked him the secret for success in his English study. Dr. did not expect such question, and for a moment he was at a loss for words. While trying to come up with an answer, he subconsciously rested his left palm on the English-Chinese dictionary, which he carried with him almost all the time. "See, that may be the answer." Another classmate sitting at the table pointed to the dictionary. "It was worn out. The spine of the dictionary is patched with tape. You must have opened it thousands of times." Then he turned around to the classmate who raised the question. "But yours looks like new, so does mine." Dr. nodded. Every time a page was turned and a word was checked, one more grain of sand was collected on road to a pleasant land. Dr. seized every opportunity available. Local radio began to teach English. He bought the textbook and found it to be much more challenging than the textbook used at school. Teachers were also highly qualified, and Dr. particularly liked an English professor with a deep baritone and a perfect accent. Attending his class was a joy in addition to learning. Study was not supposed to be boring, otherwise, it could not last. Dr. listened to every broadcast lesson and never missed a beat. That was the early episode of his English learning while he was in high school. There was a long way to go, but he got off to a good start. At the center of the factory was a two-story concrete structure. That was the research department. In the second-floor library, several rows of bookshelves were aligned with a couple of feet in between. The frame of the shelves was made of L-shaped angle iron bars, reinforced at the back by flat bars affixed diagonally to form stable triangles. Sturdiness was essential, because the shelves had to hold heavy volumes of chemical abstracts, a publication of American Chemical Society, which accumulated over many years. Those hardcovers were made by copying the original publications, an open secret at the time. Several professional journals, Chinese or foreign, were also on display in the library as the primary source of current technical information. A large reading table covered with glass was in the middle, flanked by a few cabinets. When the political frenzy was toned down, that room began to see more visitors, and Dr. went there frequently. With access to that library, he was able to learn technology and improve his English at the same time. His formal post was still in the workshop, and there were only so many excuses he could find to enter the research center during work hours, but he felt the opportunity for the future was there. Outside in the society at large, learning foreign languages became increasingly popular and politically trendy as well. This was the time between Nixon's China visit and the end of the Cultural Revolution. Every time you turned on the radio, some station was teaching some foreign language. The way of radio teaching, however, was very different from the time when Dr. was still in high school, and it had the unmistakable mark of the Cultural Revolution. The first English class always started from "Long live Chairman Mao." In French lessons, it was
"Vive le Président Mao."
In German,
"Es lebe Vorsitzender Mao."
And in Japanese, the listeners heard the shouting of "Banzai." The teachers of the opening class were invariably college students who were originally workers, peasants, or soldiers and later enrolled through political recommendation. After the opening salvo, they would say an ode to the party and Mao, because without their kindness it would not have been at all possible for them to become the teacher of a foreign language. Following the ode was always a story of how the teacher, inspired by the great leader, overcame the difficulty at the beginning. One story goes like this: I did not even know Chinese well, let alone English. I had a hard time remembering the letter P and letter Q. Then I thought about Chairman Mao's teaching, surmount every difficulty to win victory. I was suddenly enlightened. The letter P and letter Q together form a pair of little scissors, and that was how I finally memorized them. The story was quite amusing, although how Mao's teaching was connected to the inspiration of a pair of scissors was not at all clear. But that did not bother the average listeners. They treated the first class as an entertainment. They knew that after the introductory lesson, the real teachers would take over. Not long after the ending of Cultural Revolution in 1976, the head of the research center was sent to Europe on an exploratory trip. He came back deeply impressed and began to organize English study class among the technical personnel. Soon he recognized Dr's language and technical skills and borrowed him from the workshop for some research work as well as the translation of the journal articles. But Dr. felt he needed a new breakthrough in English learning. He asked himself, if I meet a visitor from an English-speaking country and start a conversation, how much can I understand, and how well can I express myself to keep a meaningful conversation going? That would be a real test. In Shanghai, in that circle of intellectuals, it was not that hard to find people proficient in English. The obstacle was often the social awkwardness to engage a conversation in English between two Chinese. So the key was to find someone as a willing partner for English conversation. Dr's father could speak fluent English, but he would rather find someone else. His friend, an Oxford graduate, was quite enthusiastic to help
Dr.
Their regular meetings lasted quite a while until the anti-Deng campaign scared him away. A close friend of Dr. was an English major attending a college in Beijing. When he came back during vacations, they met and spoke in English. Once someone opens the mouth in a real conversation, the spontaneity and fluency would gradually follow. Finally, Dr. was officially transferred to a research institute in the industry. His was assigned to the Technical Information Group. An assistant engineer title was conferred on him to match his responsibility, although he still did not have a college degree. Once in a while, delegations from US and Europe would come to visit the institute, always accompanied by a professional interpreter hired by the industry's head office. One day as Dr. was sitting at his desk reading, the phone rang, and it was the director of the research institute. "The interpreter for today's meeting is sick, and we need a replacement in an hour. Do you feel comfortable to fill in?" Knowing the director would not ask twice, Dr. quickly responded without hesitation, "Absolutely." The visitor was a middle-aged American, a UNESCO staff member. Dr. greeted him and began introducing himself. "I am a technical personnel, and actually this is my first time doing interpreting work." Dr. tried to lower the expectations of the visitor. As they walked side by side from the gate to the meeting room, Dr. kept the conversation alive. The director was at the site, and his facial expression now looked more relaxed. Dr. spoke with confidence and clarity. The visitor, who was tense when arrived, now seemed in good spirits. Within an hour, he got all the information he wanted and smiled at
Dr.
"This is my best visit in China so far. I enjoyed the meeting here, and you did an excellent job. Hard to believe this is your first time interpreting." Dr. was excited that a real opportunity finally came to him, and he seized it. He was thinking of Francis Bacon's essay, of study. Study serves for delight, for ornament, and for ability. All the hard work was not in vain. There was a lot more he could do. "Keep going," he said to himself.